So here is my final draft for my posters. For my quote, I chose "Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans" by John Lennon. And I incorporate my basic theme was I'm using a little here. So basically, my theme I was going to kind of incorporate through all the posters was like this idea of making our life as a map. I included basically some common life steps a lot of people might go through, like maybe going to school or having a career or having a spot in a community or a family. And then I included like these little life points that maybe kind of throw us off guard, or in whether a good way or a bad way. Maybe, and like I used, for example, I included things like having a health crisis, or getting married, or changing your career, or losing your job, or becoming a grandparent. Maybe I also included these little symbols. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but it's ANKH, Ankh. It's the Egyptian. It's an Egyptian symbol for life. So I kind of use it to symbolize what maybe life might throw at us that we don't initially plan for. So I started the map by saying what we all hear like maybe a million times growing up is, what do you want to be when you grow up? So I figure that's kind of the starting point for making our plans as we transition through life, really. So this poster I'm holding right now, it represents the law of continuation. So I use the quote, and I put the quote in like little bite-sized pieces, so that way it kind of looks like segments where it's going into a line. I also increased the kerning and the leading. I increased the kerning and the leading. I also wanted, for the map, I wanted to make it where each little step that we kind of plan for, like maybe going to school or getting our first job or gaining a career, I wanted it to kind of look like it's being spaced apart equally, so that in itself looks like a line as well. And then I kind of placed the little symbols roughly where it's kind of together. I didn't want to make it look too much like it's in a line, but just so that it's kind of sequential a little bit. So my next poster here is representing the law of similarity. For the quote, I made the text have the same color and the same drop shadow. I made sure all the little symbols in these little examples were the same kind of color and the same text. And then I also made the steps this bold and the same type and color, so that way we can always zoom in on them, so that we know so that they all look similar. And I also did the same thing with the pathways. I made sure they all had arrows at the end. They're all the same weight. They're all dashed, and they all have the same kind of stroke, the stroke color. So in my next poster is representing the law of common fate. I made each text a different color. I also wanted to make sure that this text was a lot different than the others, primarily because I want to make sure each of the word segments were like very stood out a lot, and so that we could tell that they're all pointing towards the X. I used like this chalk-like font, and I also applied a drop shadow to it. It might not show up too well here, but I'm pretty sure it'll show up a little more in the computer in a second. So I made each segment of the quote a different color, and then I also kind of paired the colors with the main line segments. So I kind of like made lines for how each of the little pathways are connected, and then how they all end towards the X part. So it's kind of like a treasure map of like how maybe we might plan our life, and maybe what we might find on our hunt or on our adventure, really. So I really like this project because I feel like it really challenged me. My final draft is a lot different than my rough draft and my sketches were. but I feel like that's a good thing. I'll show you my progress here. Here you can probably see my work a little closer up. Here is the law of continuation and the law of similarity posters. Initially I had the maps like covering the whole page, but it didn't really make the text, the quote, the center point. So I really wanted to make sure they stood out more. So that's why, that's why it's a little to the side, or that's why this is kind of overlapping a bit. But if you compare it to my previous drafts, so this was the law of continuation before. So here's my rough draft for the law of continuation posters. Yeah, for the law of continuation. So I wanted it to be where the main stages were kind of broken into squares, and they kind of like were spaced so that they look like they're appearing towards the top of the mountain and kind of leading up to the quote. And then I would have like all these life kind of major life events that might happen on the road. But it was just too much imagery, and I feel like it really didn't pair well with the text. I really do like the background image. I guess as a side note, one of my plans for this draft was to include like the Scream painting from, Edward, I forget his name, but where the person in the painting's just screaming. I feel like that would be what was going to be a cool background, but I feel like it was just going to take away too much from the text. So here is draft for the law of similarity poster, and I like how it doesn't have as much imagery. I really like the colors here and how all of the flowers, but it wasn't showcasing the quote very much. So I kind of like how this kind of looks more like a map, and I really like how the dashed lines look, really. I like how it kind of maybe illustrates the point a little more than just having a few pictures here. But I liked them both. And my last one for the law of common fate. Yes. There's a lot of imagery. There's a lot of imagery going on here, and it was just a little too crowded. And I mean, the quote stands out, but it's not really the emphasis of what's going on. So I really tried to change up my tactic of illustrating the law using the quote, as well as having like a background image that was similar throughout all the posters, but also illustrated the law that the poster was for. So yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I think it was a pretty cool process of just really seeing how to work it out, really. So overall, I think there was a great amount of progress between my sketches and my rough draft to my final draft, and I think it was a pretty big change from including all that imagery to using just a map that kind of is similar but also has different changes between each poster, and mainly illustrating the quote with the changes in the map and the changes in the text and the quote to really illustrate the laws. So I think this project was a lot of fun, and it really challenged my way of thinking of how to use text to illustrate something, and I feel like I learned a lot. So thank you for watching. Bye guys.